like I said, let's talk about the Snapchat stuff, because the timeline here is really important. Because Josh didn't wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to walk into the KC thread and have a fit, right? So the first thing that occurs is he makes his big Stockholm Syndrome ass post where he rewrites all the history. We went over that on a previous stream. That rustled up the red text posters again, because how could it not? This is just complete bullshit. He's totally rewriting history, and, you know, it had already been affirmed that it was allowed in the thread. So that happens. No enforcement. Everything's fine, okay? It starts to die out. People kind of go back to their own shit, and then the gym stuff happens. So then the red text posting starts going to the gym thread, because why wouldn't it? They're all connected. They're all talking to each other. It's all stupid. And then it gets swept there. We get a declaration that you're not allowed to make these accusations of Jim, even though they're made all over the rest of the site about people who have far more to lose. We covered that in the Jimageddon stream, right? Okay, so then where do we get? They have people go back to the KC thread where there's an established precedent that this is allowed, that the red text is allowed, and so they go back and start posting it. And again, that alone was not enough to awaken him. What really awoken him here on page 1466, which is before Josh showed back up again, is people start talking about the Snapchat leaks again. And the reason why is because, again, this is a story of timelines. I tend to agree with the idea that you're never going to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the Snapchat stuff. Not because it was never possible, but just because all of this evidence is so old that unless you were to pull the girl, Tanya, or the guy who originally leaked it out, you're just not going to get firsthand testimony. That being said, we don't need to get behind a reasonable doubt here. People have been dumpstered for this shit for way less. And I think that what you'll see by the end of this is that the timeline works together, that we're not just talking about a reasonable person seeing it. We're talking about like preponderance of the evidence. We're talking like over 50% chance that this is true. And so the first thing that makes people start to think again is they think back to these DSP texts where out of nowhere, Warski texts him and says, please don't believe this, because what happened was a DSP A-log put out a video where RTU talked about the Snapchat shit. And so at 1 a.m. Andy's time, he basically explains to them and sends the Medicare vid that swept. Now, and the Medicare vid makes a very specific claim. It says that the Snapchats are faked, okay? And that the girl was not under 18. And who is the bearer of that? It's Zoom, right? Who everybody knows like makes shit up or whatever. But the general logic was, well, of course Zoom is the one who's going to disprove it because he was the one who introduced it. What if I told you that it wasn't actually Zoom who brought up the Snapchat leaks? Because that's what this is all contingent on. It was all contingent that, of course, Zoom can be the one to say it's not real because he was the one who brought it up. But he wasn't. And so again, let's look at the timeline here. So DSP A-log puts out a video, this one right here, about the Snapchat shit. Warski, within hours of it coming out, messages Phil and says, fan fiction, lay low. Also, this is confirmation that when shit like this happens, they lay low. And sends him the Medicare video, which, again, all of its claims are contingent on Zoom. Yes, it was Davis and Anal Vape originally, exactly. And the thread will bring up the proof of that here in a minute. And so here he explains it. This is where he sends the Medicare vid. Yeah, no, I agree. It doesn't have to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Totally agree. For something like this, for you know, we're not in a fucking court of law or shit. It does not. It does not. And that's we're gonna get it. We're gonna get it close, and that's all we'll need to. Well, yeah, well, that's the thing about all of this. The reason why this got swept up so hard is because it's related to Zoom, and Zoom is like a liar and a creep and all of that shit. But this whole thing really becomes clear once you realize that it was not Zoom originally who brought up the Snapchat stuff. So the Snapchat stuff is not contingent on his reputation. So anyway, RTU brings it up. He sends him the Medicare video that supposedly disproves it. And again, keep in mind that when he's sending this to him, it's 7 hours after the original video making the claim was posted, and Andy's responding at 7 a.m., indicating that he was awake all night for 8 hours in a panic. Now, why does that matter? Because there's this little thing called mens rea, the state of mind of defendant, of the person. What is the state of mind that motivates a man to stay up all night to message DSP at the earliest possible time that he could possibly be awake. Okay? It's panic, right? And look, he even asks him, please, like, look at it. And DSP gets to the point where he's just like, buddy, dude, I have no idea what the fuck's happening. I'll look at it later, right? And so this little interaction made people start to look back into this. Baldur's Gate and Autistic Right. And it's surprising because, Autistic Right's a Janny here on Kiwi Farms, and he splits with Josh here just because it ends up piling up, And so this was the first post, right? Then we get down to Autistic Right responding to it, and he's going back to in the Warski thread when this was spoke about. And as he points out, that it really started to blow up once Zoom got involved, which was after the initial revelation. And so this is a post where he's talking about the feasibility of whether the Snapchat video could have been made in Adobe Premiere. And we're going to look at the video because they have someone, at least, scroll through it. And it's like a functioning application, right? And so he brings up some possibilities of React Native and stuff of how you could recreate this. And specifically that, Warski's whole defense was that the entire fake Snapchat logs could have been made in Adobe Premiere in an hour. And unfortunately, because of all this other shit that was going on at the time, nobody called him out on that and said, do it. Okay, do it. Okay, whatever, man, do it. Like, get your guy, pick your guy, and do it right now. And so, Autistic Right here kind of points out what it would actually take to make a clone of Snapchat. So he says it's not impossible, but it would be a lot harder than what he's presenting. The other thing is the age of the person. Here's the thing. I don't even think that this is what people should focus on, what the person's age is. And here's why. We're just not going to know until someone interviews her, and they're not going to interview her because, like I said at the very beginning of this segment, this shit is 7 years old, okay? No one is going to go find this person and talk to them. What does end up getting revealed is that Tanya is her name, but even more importantly, that Warski was talking about Sinead in the leaks. And specifically, Warski talks about how him and Sinead had a fight and broke up, okay? This is important. This is what blew this all back up. Because these messages are from before anyone, Warski or anyone else, publicly talked about them breaking up. And so then the logic became, just like he says here, if the breakup became public after these chat logs, then it's probably real. That's unless the gay operas had intimate knowledge of Tarski's relationships, which isn't out of the realm of possibilities. When did Aborski happen? So basically what he's proposing here is that the Snapchat leaks talk about them breaking up, but Warski did not announce it. Technically, it was Tonka that announced it until November. There's an exact date here. So if these are from before then, why would they? If you're faking these, if you're inventing these, how would you know to put this in here? Unless it had been public, right? So that's the contention: is what is the timeline here? Like I said, timeline is important. And this is going back to the Andy Warski thread where Zoom is sweeping, eventually starts sweeping. And so here we go. So those are the two messages. We have Baldur's Gate brings up, this DSP stuff. Like, well, this kind of, brings us back into question. Then we get Autistic Right pointing out not only the person's name, but also the timeline. Okay. And also that faking it would be a lot more involved than an hour in Adobe Premiere, right? Okay. So we've reduced, what these claims do is they reduce the barrier, or they reduce the bar, I should say, the bar of what it would be, Warski is essentially saying the bar to fake this is very low. I guess technically this is raising the bar of them faking it, lowering the bar of the probability that it's true, okay? So if it's way more involved to fake this, okay, so that makes it less likely. But most importantly, there's information here that is privileged. There's information here that a random faker, whether it be Davis, this random guy, anal vape, they would not know. How would they know to put this in here? And so then, out of nowhere, who shows up? Josh, who comes in to say, no more red text. So this is what I'm talking about, where all this whole memorial we just did for ABG and stuff, this was not just about, there was a rule in the thread, and it was a rule for a long time, and then arbitrarily it got changed, and people didn't follow the rule, okay? This didn't happen in a vacuum. The rule, Josh came in here and changed the rule for two reasons. Number one, because people were starting to talk about the Snapchat shit again, including his own mods, like influential people on the forum. And number two, because people were moving to the gym thread. And, you may think, well, why would it move to the gym thread? Why is this even connected in the first place? People have been arguing in Jim's thread for years. I went over this in one of the other streams, right? I talked about Josh fighting in the gym thread for years. So why? Why would we go to the gym thread when we're to use the same pattern of pattern of like talking and a-logging about Kino Casino? And it's because all these guys have become so in bed with each other and have openly admitted to talking to each other. And Josh has some open posts in this forum where he's like, yeah, I talk to PPP about everything, and I get his show notes on everything I talk about and shit like that. That necessarily, when one of them is attacked, the other ones have to deploy their infrastructure, their niche, to like defend the organism, okay? And so when the stuff happens in the gym thread, and then when the stuff happens in this thread where people are talking about the Snapchat shit again, what happens? Boom, you're not special, stop spamming my site, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, this is where Londo does the blue posts. Okay? And this is what gets him banned, if you insist. Now, I have my own little argument with him where I basically point out why this is stupid. That's not really, I mean, if you want to go look at it, I'm not going to self-aggrandize. But anyway, back to the Snapchat thing. Here's all the chat logs. So this is going back through the logs, and it's in Zoom stream. But here's the thing. This is only the first, like I said, this is ongoing, guys. They end up finding the original stream that showed these, which was, again, not Zoom's. It was, so we don't need to rely on his, on him being reliable. So here, he's got the timeline, okay? So 1st of July, Tarski gross ERP with Tanya on Snapchat. And that's because some of these Snapchats do have dates on them, okay? So the first one we have is from the 1st of July. 14th of August is Sinead meets up with Tarski, they fight. And we know that because that's a date in here when he says that, okay? October 18th was the first time it was publicly spoken that Tarski and Sinead were going to break up. All right? So how would logs faked at some point between July and August include something that was not publicly disclosed until October? This is the smoking gun here, guys. How would this Davis guy or Anal Vape I mean, we don't even have to say Zoom because, again, he wasn't the one who produced them. Davis and Anal Vape, how would they know that Tarski and Sinead broke up before it was publicly discussed? Okay. And 16 October, before after Donga's claim, the Snapchat thing comes up again. So this is like a couple days before. Sinead, a breakup officiated by Tard. So what it indicates here is that what happened is Donga had been shown these chat logs before, like maybe a couple of days before they came out. And, that's why after they came out, he makes his claim. The official breakup was not till 8th of November. And then we have the no-show. And the timeline, the other reason the timeline here is important is because look at how much is happening in such a short period of time. This is kind of why a lot of this got swept. Because, you had all this drama over the fight in Knoxville, right? You have all this shit about Donga getting doxxed and his fake record, all this stuff, classic sector stuff. Everybody knows about it. Who pays attention to stuff. It's a great little arc, right? So, it makes sense why this would get swept up in the overall storyline, for lack of a better term. And keep in mind here, guys, who was it who doxed Donga right before the fight? Zoom. So who would have a motive to suddenly sweep for Warski? Who would have a motive now that he's turned, if this is a fight between Warski and Zoom, okay, or sorry, Warski and Donga, who would have a motivation to suddenly go from being against Warski in October to sweeping for him in December? And who was the one who said, oh, these are fake? The only person who ever made the claim they were fake, by the way. Okay, do you see how the interests here are converging? How that, if you look at the timeline here, let's look at the Zoom aspect of this timeline. Because again, I'm not asking you to trust literally anything Zoom says, okay? You do not need to trust anything that he says. And the only thing that assertion that he made here alone is that they're fake. So if we're not going to trust anything he says, the only thing we can throw out from him is that they're fake. Not that they existed in the first place, because they didn't come from him. And look, it says maybe Zoom made these messages to fuck with. Right, so that was the initial presumption. But again, let's keep looking, because we're going to find out that they didn't even come from him. The source was streamer called Davis. See here. Okay, so right after Warski was Sargon on the stream. This is the original stream. Yeah, well, Zoom took credit for it because he was the one who confronted Donga. That's my point. My point is that whoever actually got the information, it was Zoom who took the position. And because he took the anti-Donga position, it meant that he had to basically reputation wash Warski, right? Exactly, because he became friends with Warski and they were texting each other every night. Exactly, that's what I'm trying to say here. So this stream from Davis is actually the first one with the Snapchat leaks, not Zoom. So again, if we're going to presume that everything Zoom says is a lie that comes solely from him, right, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing to think, right, you don't have to throw out the initial leaks. All you have to throw out is his later assertion they were fake, because the initial leaks didn't come from him. They came from this guy.
Anyone else?
That's the impression I was getting. How long?
And Baldur's Gate kind of sums it up perfectly. This is not correct. The source was a streamer called Davis. What you claim is actually the exact opposite of what happened. Zoom's testimony actually appears to be the only evidence that the texts were fabricated and appear to be the sole source of Warski's subsequent claim to be vindicated. Keep this in mind, everybody, that the only testimony that they're fake is from Zoom, because Josh is going to make a statement I actually agree with about Zoom, but is he going to apply it to this? And he's going to make it in this thread a couple messages later. That's how soon it's going to be. Certainly, it's the only evidence presented in the Medicare video. And remember, this is the video he sent to DSP as the supposed the magic bullet that would get rid of all of these claims, right? You send this to DSP, and what is Medicare's primary source, his primary witness for why they're fake? It's Zoom. The images were fake. The video was fake. The girl involved is not underage. It was set up to bait Andy Warski in a plot of revenge. A screenshot of Zoom saying 2 of those 3 things on Twitter were presented as proof. Okay. So this is, I brought this up in the thread, the concept of the fruit of the poison tree, which is that if you have someone who, as a witness, has been impeached, you know they're a liar. You know that they can't be trusted and that they make shit up. It colors everything else that they say that they are the primary, or in this case, sole source of evidence for. And again, what is the sole source of evidence that these are fake? A guy who, according to admin himself, we should never believe. Okay? And then what does Warski do immediately after he says this, after this video comes out? He says, thank you.
It's been months that Davis and Anal Vape have been trying to... Still, after we found out that...
Interesting. Who does he say was the ones who brought up Snapchat? Not Zoom. No. Even Warski knows who originally brought it up.
They were fake, and all the evidence shows that they made it up.
What evidence? Evidence from who? From what source? What is the chain of custody of the evidence? It's Zoom, right? Fruit of the poison tree. If you couldn't, if was he lying then, or was he lying now, as they say?
Finally, they've been harassing me. Davis and Anal Vape make me look like a pedophile. Zoom right now is talking to the police and going to get them arrested.
Yeah. Still waiting on that one.
I'm so happy. I wait for what I have after, but Zoom.
She originally implied that she was 17. It turns out she's actually...
He's got all the evidence ready.
...in Houston, Texas. We found her through Twitter and through an old YouTube account. We found out who she really was, and we got her real age. And she is 15. And
this is like so fucking awesome.
I'm trying to figure out why 56...
Just oration from the master there, guys. So Davis, the actual source, asked for proof of why they're fake. So this is the guy where they originally came from. And he's like, what do you mean they're fake? Do you have proof? You have proof? These tweets celebrating his vindication still up. And so we, like I said, we have video of them like swiping through the Snapchat leaks and stuff. And, that's why I think that first post from Artistic Right is important, when he points out exactly how involved you'd have to be to fake these. Because if we have no proof they're fake, well, then all we have is speculation about them being fake. And then that's going to rely upon the quality of the Snapchat leaks themselves, right? And we're gonna show The video embedded in this post shows the recordings going through the chat. So like I said, what is the quality of this evidence? Let's see.
Go.
Where are you?
I don't know.
We need to.
Like, does this look fake?
Better.
A fair question.
Questionable. But
What I'm looking for is there's a clip here too where she literally swipes like the app is live, right? The app is like, these aren't just screenshots, okay? And he says they show animations in the profile, right? Here we go. Let's let this load for a minute. But anyway, so, and when is the claim made that they're fake, right? It's this stream, which had been removed, which had luckily been archived here. And Zoom made Tanya record it. The entire "this thing is fake" came from Zoom, who pressured a 15-year-old alleged victim of grooming into recording stuff. It's no wonder she decided to DFE instead. And that's the other important thing, is the only person, really, who could confirm or deny any of this made the choice to delete everything and get out, which was obviously the right choice from their perspective, of course. And it's probably because the person contacting them to get involved is this guy, who, again, we've been told to never trust about anything. And here we go. Here's the post I was referring to before. So again, if the sole proof that they're fake is coming from a guy who's wholesale fabricate whatever he wants in ways that don't even make sense, the only source of the text, see, and this is a lie. This is a lie that had been proven earlier in the thread. Look, okay, so this is at Monday at 2. This is on page 1471. Where's the post where from Baldur's Gate where he shows that it wasn't? Like, conclusively? Like, we're talking about Sunday, you know? So, like, there's no, this was what this indicates to me is that he just didn't even read the thread, you know, is that he just showed up and didn't read the thread. Work website. Anyway, the point is that I would say that there's three elements to this that indicate that they're real. Okay. And here are my three elements I'm going to propose. Element number 1, the timeline. The texts contain information that was not publicly known, and therefore the fakers could not have known to include, other than by sheer chance, months before the events that they reference were ever publicly informed. That's number 1. Element number 2, the only person who's ever made the claim that they're fake is the most unreliable person in the story, and whose own testimony the admin himself has said never take as given, okay? Number 3, the quality of the evidence itself, which is what I'm trying to bring up here, is that it is a live app, okay? And the level of the bar to make those up, to recreate that app environment, is higher than what Warski portrayed when he argued against us. It would take more than an hour in Premiere. And again, look at this first post. He goes over it pretty clearly, where he explains what it would require. He tells you exactly React Native, all this stuff. Like, it could be done. It's just a lot hard. Like, it would require specialized knowledge, okay? And not only that, but like, it would require specialized knowledge, and you'd have to be able to get that version of the app, you know, months later. Also, and notice that none of these elements ever touch her age, because that is something that we can't really know, okay? But you don't need it. You don't need it. The most, like, the most out there parts of this, you don't even need to prove to show this. And a lot, okay, here's the counter argument. The detractor, you know, they might say, but DogZer0, but Alogs, it's all circumstantial evidence. It's circumstantial, right? Okay, let's talk about circumstantial evidence. There's this massive misconception that circumstantial evidence cannot be used to convict, even at a criminal level. And like I said, we're not trying to get this beyond a reasonable doubt. We're just trying to get this preponderance of the evidence, 51%. There's this misconception that circumstantial evidence cannot convict. It can. And let me explain to you an example. Let's say that you're standing in front of a group of people, and you have a table in front of you, and you hold up a pen, okay? You click the pen, you show the whole group a pen, right? And you drop the pen. and it passes under the table where the group can't see it, and it hits the ground and it makes a sound. And you ask that group of people, where did that come from? What hit the ground? What's the group of people going to say? They're going to say, the pen. You dropped the pen. And you say, well, did you see the pen hit the ground? And they'll say, no. And you'll say, well, that means you only have circumstantial evidence. You only saw it pass the threshold of the desk. You only heard it hit the ground shortly after passing it. That's only circumstantial evidence, dude. Here's another example. A man walks into a house with an umbrella, and it's soaking wet. And he closes the umbrella and he puts it in the the umbrella box. And you come down and you greet him and you say, "Oh, it must be raining outside." And you haven't looked outside all day. And he comes back to you and he says, "Oh, you didn't see outside. You didn't see it raining." It's like, well, yeah, but you're wet. The umbrella's wet. I can hear the rain outside. All that's circumstantial evidence. And so how much circumstantial evidence is it going to take before we say that this is almost certainly, like, this is probably true, right? So I don't want to hear, because they're going to say that. People always rely on that. They say, it's circumstantial. You only have circumstantial evidence. You only have circumstantial evidence. But never let them say that and that is not enough, because it is. The alternative explanation that it's faked, the bar is far higher than if it wasn't. The only person saying that it is faked is unreliable. And the content of the messages themselves, the timeline, is only possible if they were real. So, again, what is our conclusion? And, Josh fights more in here. And look, he even admits it. Corey Barnhart is only... So this is only a conundrum when you accept the premise that Zoom is both the only person saying they're fake and the only person providing them. But if he's not the one providing them, this is no longer a conundrum, okay? And this is what Baldur's Gate was responding to. Look, there's no response to this. Baldur's Gate points it out directly to him. I haven't read it. So then it goes from, notice that he starts to engage with the claims about the Snapchat, and then when he gets completely blown out, he goes back to this being about his mental illness. Whenever you try to force me to do something or else, I write you all off as faggots and go out of my way to avoid it. I keep telling you, you're your own worst enemy because you're such ineffective, even counterproductive messengers. Okay. All right, we'll see. We'll see who's an effective messenger. We'll see, what message gets across, right? And I don't know why nobody listens to me. This is why, man, because you make an assertion, it gets immediately disproven, and then you start spurging out about your own personal struggles in the thread. This is why. I also have no relationship with Andy Warski. Very interesting, he says that when he then goes and says that he talks to PvP all the time. I don't even have him on, oh, thank you for telling us this. And let me get to the post where he... Sometimes he messages me to ask if I know about some drama he's not familiar with. I will usually do brief info dump, which, if they're anything like the brief info dump he provided in this thread, I consider it a good opportunity to develop how I want to talk about stuff. On Fridays, he's my sort of rubber it's just so cringe, man. It's so cringe because the operative claim, before this became about Snapchat, the operative claim here was that Josh was only coming into the thread because he's friends with these guys. This is, I said I wasn't going to talk too much about my argument with him in this thread because you can go read it yourself. There's just one part about it that I'll show you guys because it's just because it's directly relevant to this part of it. And it's when I said that, it's when I directly asked him. I asked him directly. I said, look here's the problem. This wasn't a problem until you were friends with these guys. And then the minute if you don't care about the truth of this ongoing discussion, you would not be here caring in the first place. The fact you did a year ago before you were friends with the thread topic suggests this. To simplify, before you were friends, the red text was okay. Now that you are, and I guess it's spreading to others, it's not. Is it the issue that it's spreading because of a connection can be made here, or is problem just this thread? At what point is the issue with red text less an issue of format or stand and more an issue with those you wish to protect? This is my point, okay? At what point is this breakdown just happening because this happens to be about a business partner? Because he tries to say later, like we just looked at, that he doesn't even talk to these guys, but then actually he literally helps them prep for their show, because it's a Warski show too, okay? And, this indicates a conflict of interest. And you know what's funny? here's a solution, because here's what he like would try to say, and he said this in the thread. It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I have to, like, you know, run my forum. I have to make, like, keep order or whatever. And it's like, well, why don't you have someone in charge of the thread who's not you, who isn't like close to this close to the topic? And that's the way it was before. Like, there are things to criticize Autistic Right for, with the whole logs with Gator. That was really cringe. And if you actually go back to that argument, I was the one who criticized him in the thread that made him try to resign the admin, if you go back to that. But anyway, my point is that for all of that, he had kept order in this thread without, like, sweeping people. And it was only when when Josh decided, look, I'm the closest one to the subject matter, better barge in and start making crazy claims that get immediately disproven, and then screaming about, like, my made up mental illness. So, you know, and what's funny is there's still more work on this being done, you know. Like, there's even, like, fairly recently a post here. Let me find it. Like, they're still going into this. And yeah, they talk about how, like, you shouldn't be relying on Zoom for anything either way. And when you realize that he was not the one to when he was not the one to originate this claim, it sort of just totally destroys it destroys the whole point. Yeah. And then of course, what do we get? We get the classic suggestion after this, which is split the thread, right? The fans don't like that that people are talking about this. Fans don't like that the A-log thread is A-logging the topic, right? So they suggest this thread split, as if this hadn't already been discussed, and people point out what happens when you do that, like what happened in the gym thread. It never works, right? And so I think it's only going to get worse, honestly. I think it's going to, I think, you know, now that, like, did you get to Lando's? Yeah, we already talked about it, where he followed the rules, and then Josh got mad because it was, like, on a technicality. And this is all, you know, this was posted in the thread. This is what's happening right now over in wherever they live.
You out?
Yep, I'm done.
Joe just quit.
There he is. There's PPP.
He fucking told me to go help with Frosty, so I did. Then he told me to drop meat and got pissed off when I was helping with Frosty.
I know, but when he's doing what you told him to, and then you yelled at him because he wasn't dropping more fries or something, while he was helping with 12 fucking Frosties that you told him to come help with.
Me, my mom, and fucking Richard. It's like, no, I'm not fucking closing with just the three of us, especially with the way he acts.
You know, this is PPP right now. He's now going to have to sweep for Josh and Warski at the same time. And I don't know how he's going to do it. Yeah, PPP working and standing up. That's true. That's the most unbelievable part of this.
Thank you for watching this clip by Colonel J. This is the King of Bold here. Remember to like and subscribe. Juice!